Writecast podcast, a podcast to help actors find auditions and book roles. I'm your host, Ashley Scott Myers. Today we have Ashlyn Yennie. She began her career getting cast in the horror classic, The Human Centipede, and has continued to build her career and has lately been the lead in a number of Lifetime and Hallmark female-driven thrillers. We go into great details on how she was cast in The Human Centipede, and then we talk how she's been able to build her career and continue to get cast since then. So stay tuned for that interview. If you want our free guide, 5 ways to find auditions and get cast, just go to www.thewritecast.com/guide. Put in your email address and we'll send you the guide for free. We cover a wide range of topics in the guide to help you find opportunities, from booking theater auditions, going to Hollywood for pilot season, how to create a professional self-tape, how to find voiceover acting gigs in your town or city, how to find acting opportunities in indie and student films in your local area. The guide can certainly be helpful to any actor at any level, but we're putting an emphasis on trying to help actors who are outside of Hollywood. Again, if you'd like to get the free guide, just go to www.thewritecast.com/guide. So now let's dig into the interview with Ashlyn Yennie. Here it is. Welcome, Ashlyn, to the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Yeah, I'm originally from a really small town in Wyoming. I grew up, the town that I lived in has like 9,000 or 10,000 people in it. There was like a main street and one movie theater, not a lot going on. And my mom always encouraged my 2 sisters and I to do, anything artistic. And so my first play was actually when I was 4, and I played Goosey Lucy. And I memorized like somewhat of like 25 pages. And my mom was like, I think she's got a great memory, which runs in my family. We have photographic memories. And so my mom was always really encouraging of just, flex that actor muscle if you want to do that. I was a dancer, so I was used to performing. And it was around age like 12. Yeah, it was 11 or 12 that I told my parents I wanted to be an actor. And this is, of course, like coming from like a small town girl in Wyoming. I was like, I want to be an actor. And I told my dance teacher, who then gave me the phone number to an agency in Denver, Colorado, which was the biggest city closest to us. And I called it. This is before like internet, it's like.
And so you're literally a 13-year-old kid. This wasn't your parents calling for you. You picked up the phone and made that first cold call.
I picked up the phone. Yeah, I had 2 other sisters, and I kind of convinced them too. I was like, hey, we should call, and you guys could do modeling classes, because I have 2 older sisters who are gorgeous. And my mom grew up here in California. She grew up in Huntington Beach, and so she was very, very familiar with the industry. She hand modeled at one point, and my mom, I remember coming home from school one day. I was in 6th grade, so I was like 11 years old. I was very, very young. And I came home from school and my mom was on the phone with the agency. They had like called back because I had submitted pictures, whatever. And my mom said, I'm going to take you and they're going to reject you and you're going to know what this business is like. And I said, okay. So my mom and my Nana drove my 2 sisters and I to Denver, and instead of rejecting us, they signed us. And I started taking acting classes every weekend. My dad would drive me to Denver to take acting classes, and I would perform in these, they called them, my agency would bring out agents from Los Angeles and New York, and we would audition for them. And sometimes they would, sign you, or they would be like, hey, I'm going to keep you in my back pocket and I'm going to submit you on, pilots or whatever. And then if you got an audition, you would, go to LA or New York and you would have an audition. So that was my life for a little bit. And then we ended up moving to Denver when I was in high school. And then that's when I started doing local theater and really, really deciding like this was the path I was going to choose. So when I was,
was your move to Denver, was your family moved to Denver? Was that your family could see that you were a budding actress and they wanted to support that, or was it just a coincidence that you guys moved to Denver?
I think it was both. My dad got he's a CPA and he got a job offer. Gotcha. He had his own firm in Wyoming, but then he decided to, kind of reach out. And I think honestly, my parents did want to give their daughters a bit more opportunity. And so they kind of saw, that it wasn't going away and that I was really going to continue this. And so it just kind of all worked out where, one of my sisters still lives in Denver.
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, my parents are super supportive. And so it's based on the three of us girls, but also, my dad got a better job.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha.
it all worked out. And then when I was 18, I did come out to LA first. And I was out here and I didn't quite know what to do because, in Los Angeles, there's, 10,000 actors move here every year.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any training really. I had, acting class from, Denver,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have any I wasn't a method actor at that point. I didn't have anything. So,
and your agent, you didn't have like some experience at enough of a resume just through doing all of these other things to find an agent or to have some contacts or whatever in LA.
No, not in LA. And, it was just, I just kind of was like, I don't think, and I had this feeling, I was like, I'm not ready for LA yet. And then, I ended up, it was a very weird situation. I ended up meeting this woman who was, I think it was at like some seminar here in Los Angeles that was for young actors, and she was there like coaching actors basically. Her name is Joan C. She passed away, but she owned a school in Manhattan at the time it was called the New York School for Film and Television. Now it's called something different, but it's called SFT, School for Film and Television. And she approached me and said, you should really come to New York. And I think you would really love it. And I think you need to get training and you'll discover your passion for this business. And I was like, no way. I was like, I'm not going to New York. I'd been to New York previously. And I was like, no way. I'm a small town girl. Like, I can't imagine living in New York City. Mm-hmm. Well, then a couple months had passed and she kept calling. And so I was like, I got nothing else going on. I was back in Denver. I was like, I'm not going to like traditional college. So I was like, I'm going to give this a try. It was a 2-year conservatory. So I enrolled and I swear to God, some of the best training that I, hands down could have ever been given as a young, 18, 19-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. I started studying, I Meisner trained. So that's the method that I use. And it was just like a really swift kick in my butt on how to be an actor. Mm-hmm. And the school I went to had a really great program because not only did they teach you just acting class and scene study and Shakespeare and improv and like voiceover, the whole spectrum of being an actor, but we also had to take a film genres course where we had to learn about, the arts of different types of film. We had to do a filmmaking class. We were affiliated with the School for Visual Arts. Mm-hmm. So we would go be in short films. And so we were getting just this like very cool education. And you also had interns for casting directors both years. And they were long internships. And so you learned the casting process. You learned about commercial casting. You learned about, television pilot casting. Mm-hmm. And so and then also I had a business course where you taught you how to run yourself as a business. And it was and I swear to you that because I had that, I was able to become a successful working actor, not a famous actor, but a working actor. Yeah, and there's a difference because everybody, you can be famous, that's the dream for some people is just to be very, very famous. But mine was always just to be a working actor. I just wanted to be a working actor.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I can say that now. Yeah, I can say that now at 36. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter and I provide for my family through just acting work. And that's not a lot of people can say that. And I feel very comfortable saying that living in LA. Of course I wish I made more money, but I'm very, very thankful for the career that I've kind of carved out for myself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And then I was in New York for 6 years and then I moved to LA and I was ready at that point.
Gotcha. So you've lived in New York. It sounds like you moved there without knowing a lot of people. You moved to LA without knowing a lot of people. I know there's going to be people listening to this podcast thinking about making those moves. Maybe you can just give us some quick tips. Where in New York would you suggest a newbie land? Where in LA would you suggest a newbie land? And what are some differences and sort of things to look out for when you're moving to LA or New York?
Yeah, when I moved to New York, it was a different New York City than they have now. When I moved there, it was like 2004, and I lived in Manhattan. I always lived on the Upper West Side. I got screwed over a couple times on, apartments because I didn't know what I was doing. But I feel like nowadays you can really seek out people who've been there or who currently live there and get the scoop on like where's the best place to live. Like I have tons of friends who moved there and they live very far out in Brooklyn, but they have great places and it's much more affordable than living in the city. I was very fortunate that I got to live in the city and I got to experience that. I will tell you that I do feel like I got really great training in New York City. But I learned how to audition in Los Angeles, if that makes sense.
Yeah, gotcha.
So in New York, I learned the art of acting and, I found the method that I like and I found, just a really great, passion for this business. And then when I moved here to LA, I moved to LA in 2010 and my boyfriend, who's now my husband, we met in New York and he moved out here before me. And so he had friends here and they were, in Groundlings or they were, on TV shows. So we were kind of like, I knew people. I also had a film that I did and I booked it when I was in New York, but had just come out in 2010. Gotcha. And so it brought me to LA, which I always said I was never going to move to LA unless I had something to go off of. And so when I moved here, I had an agent and a manager right away. I didn't have I basically landed and I already had representation.
Gotcha.
And yeah.
And so let's talk about your first big credit, Human Centipede. That was obviously a movie everybody talked about when it came out. Maybe you can just walk us through that. So you've sort of brought us up to date. You've now been trained. You've got some experience under your belt. How did you get that audition? And then ultimately, how did you get cast?
Yeah, it was very, very bizarre and very quick. My manager at the time, she called me and said, "Hey, do you want to audition for this controversial European film?" And at that time, I graduated school. I was 22. I'd done a little bit of like soap opera work. I'd auditioned for some, pilots, but, very small roles. And I'd done some commercials. And I didn't have like any like real experience, making a full length feature. And so I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's audition for this. And I went in and, there was just this like synopsis of what the film was going to be about. And I saw girl after girl leave. Some of these girls were my friends too. And I was like, this can't be real. And again, I'm 22 or I think I was like 22 or 23 when I filmed it. And I just remember being like, this is so bizarre. And I went in and I met the producer. The director was not there. I met the producer, Alona, who was the sister of the director, Tom Six. And she was like, no, this is a real movie. We're making it. Like, we're actually began filming in like a week. It was crazy turnaround time. And I was like, oh, wow. And so she was like, a lot of the film, you're going to be in prosthetic. You're going to be with heavy prosthetics. Like you and the other girl are not going to be able to speak very much. You're going to be attached to the other person, but it's going to be, everything's fake. They had very, very good special effects for it. They're all practical effects too. And I auditioned for it. And I honestly, at this age, I probably wouldn't have auditioned for it, but being so young and just like so curious. And I remember leaving that audition and I was like, I can't stop thinking about this movie. It's so weird. It's so weird. Also, I wasn't allowed to talk about it, even the audition. And then I got the call back and it was kind of a round robin with a bunch of different girls. And then they ultimately put Ashley Williams and I together and we had good chemistry and basically they were, it was a lot of it was nonverbal. So it was, she would just throw scenarios at us and she would have just the camera close up on our eyes. And she was just telling us to convey the emotion through our eyes. And that was really, really intense, especially for your first on like foray into, independent film. And then the next day my manager called me and was like, hey, they want to book you and you're going to Amsterdam next week. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And then I kind of had to like tell my mom and everybody about like, oh, I'm going to Amsterdam for 5 weeks and I'm going to be sewn, ass to mouth. It was very, very weird. It was such a weird thing, but it wasn't really that weird filming it. Mm-hmm. I can say that now because I've done so many other projects since then. Mm-hmm. And some of the other projects I worked on have not been as like caring or safe or anything. And they were really, really lovely. And we made this really crazy film. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, Tom Six, the director, was like, this is going to be big. And I was like, yeah, right. I remember making fun of it. I was like, this is just like a weird indie horror. Like, nobody's going to watch this. Mm-hmm. A year later, because we filmed it in 2008, a year later, Tom and Alona, I get this email that it was playing at this film festival in London. Well, I was just a crazy enough kid at that time. And I had, thought I had so much expendable money. I was like, I'm going. So I flew myself to London for the weekend to go watch the movie. I just wanted to see it play in a theater. I was like, this is cool. I don't know when I'll experience this again. And the other actor and I in the movie, his name's Akihiro. He plays the Japanese character in the film. He went there as well. So we met up and he was like, what are you going to wear? And I was like, oh, I'm going to wear a dress. He was like, I'm going to wear a suit. Let's dress up for our movie. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. We got to the theater.
Yep.
And there were like 900 people there to watch the movie.
Huh.
And that's when it hit me. I was like, oh my God, this is a bigger deal than I think about. And there were really famous directors there for horror. And they were all there to watch the movie. It played at Fright Fest, which is the UK's largest horror film festival. So, mm-hmm. There were people from all over there to see the movie. And it had played in a couple of film festivals, like smaller, like just in like Spain, and it started winning awards. And so people were really, really excited to see it. And then suddenly it got picked up by IFC, it got picked up by Downey Films, and mm-hmm. then a Japanese distribution company. And it was just everywhere. And for the next 5 years of my life, it's all anybody wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. It was honestly just, I went to conventions, any interview, I did the second one as well. And I started getting, that really catapulted me mm-hmm. into Hollywood, basically, where then, when I came here, it was because of the success of the Human Centipede. I had a very good manager, and they were getting me in the room for, at that time I was going in for series regulars on new pilots, mm-hmm. and it was really, really fast. I don't want to say that I was completely ready for it because I didn't know how to audition in Los Angeles, and I can thank Margie Haber Studios for teaching me. I enrolled in class there when I first moved here, and mm-hmm. My teacher was this woman, Eden Bernardi. She passed away, but she was wonderful. And I had to learn the art of auditioning because it was very, very different than in New York. In LA, it was just not as, it's just much quicker here. The turnaround's much quicker. In New York, it just felt easier. It just felt like hey, let's try that again. Where I found in LA, it was like you walk in, you do it, you leave. That was it. Yeah. There was no small talk. There was nothing. And I kind of felt blindsided a bit when I would go into these rooms, and I was like, oh, it's so different than auditioning in New York. But I learned how to audition here. And that was one of the most crucial things, I think, for any actor, is learning the process.
Yeah, I'm curious, and you sort of allude to it a little bit in some of the things you just said. Obviously, being in a big movie like that for an actor is fantastic. Exactly what you're saying. You just get more opportunities. But was there any sort of thoughts that maybe you would get pigeonholed? I mean, you did the sequel, and it sounds like you were doing the horror conventions. Was there a conscious choice to say, well, I don't want to be a new scream queen. I want to be a more diverse actress, and trying to go in that direction? Did you feel somewhat pigeonholed in sort of the horror genre? Because it's sort of a very sort of a close-knit group of people mm-hmm. that work in that space.
Yeah, for sure. And, I thought it. I thought the Scream Queen title that I was getting dubbed. And yeah, it definitely pigeonholed me for a while because people thought I was this crazy actress. And, some people wouldn't audition me based on that movie. They were like, oh no, I'm not even going to read her for this because she's crazy. She was in that crazy movie. And then you had other casting directors. Like I remember there was this one casting director and she was such a huge fan of the movie. She made me bring in a signed copy for her. And I was like, but it was a very weird time because, it was before social media existed. It was before I could really tell like my side of like, hey, I was in that movie, but I can also do so many other things, and so people kind of only saw me as that actress for a good 5 years. And I really had to work very, very hard to break out of that, to be seen in a different light, because you can get pigeonholed for sure.
And let's talk about that. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that next sort of phase of your career, You mentioned Antidote, but you've done a number of these female-driven thrillers now, Antidote, Variant, Burning Out of Lies. You've done a bunch of those. So maybe take us through that. It sounds like you had this early part of your career, which was the Human Centipede and the sequel. How did you slowly get into these female-driven thrillers? And what was your first one? And maybe you can talk about how you actually got that audition and ultimately got cast in that first one of these female-driven thrillers.
Yeah. It was interesting. I took a break, to be honest. I took a break, a little bit of a break from acting for a bit. It doesn't look that way if you would look at my, IMDb credits, because, they put out when it was released. And so it looks like I consistently have worked every single year. But there was a chunk of time in there where I didn't work. And I consciously made a choice where I was like, I'm not feeling really proud of anything that I've done, and I'm not feeling really like I'm getting the opportunities that I want. And so it was actually a Lifetime movie that changed everything. And it was interesting because it was a very, and I'm giving away a lot about this movie, but it's called The Wrong Neighbor, and Paul Ruddy cast it. And he put the breakdown out on a website called Actors Access, which if you're a new actor, that is your best friend. Get on Actors Access immediately. I got on when I was like 20. It's your best friend because you can really build credits there. And I saw and I at that point, right now I don't really look at Actors Access that often, but at that point in my life, I had, got the notification. I saw this character and she was crazy. Like she was this crazy psychopath. And I had written down in, my, meditation journal, which is, I think everyone should, be writing down, goals and dreams and things. I wrote down, a TV movie. I wanted to do a TV movie, and I just put that like randomly on one line. And I saw this breakdown, and it wasn't great pay. I'll just put it out there right now. It wasn't great pay, and it was a lot of work. But I saw it, and my manager didn't know that I went to the audition. So I got the audition, and the director happened to be in the room. And right before I went in, I saw girls that looked just like me, girls that I'd seen in television movies for auditioning for this, and that's what you have to remember too as an actor, is just because something may be, not like as high profile or not as well paying, there are people who have way, way, way more credits that are willing to do that work. So because sometimes they just really like the character, they want to build it for the resume, or they have the time to do it, whatever it is. So don't ever assume like, oh, I'm going to book this. Like I've been in rooms. Yeah. So anyways, so I told myself, just throw it all out there. Like be crazy, do this character how you want to do her, and play this like femme fatale killer. Right. And the director was in the room, and I was doing this scene, and it's like, she's crazy. This character I play, Jordan, is just off the rocker. And the director could not stop laughing uncomfortably through this scene that I was doing. And it was like, I got a call on like Sunday afternoon, and my manager called me and goes, "Did you audition for this movie? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, "Well, they want to book you." He was like, "Ash, I don't know. And I was like, "I'm doing it." I'm going to do this movie. And I was so excited because I booked it. And again, it wasn't great pay, but there's a reason why I decided, yes, this is exactly what I need to do. I had so much fun doing this movie. And while I'm there, they had hired two other actors. There was three other actors in the film with me that were all leads. And two of the actresses one of them was from a soap opera, and the other one, was very big in Canada. And they had done TV movies before. And it was the young girl, she was like, yeah, when this goes on Lifetime. And I was like, this is going to be a Lifetime movie? And she goes, yeah, it is a Lifetime movie. Don't you know that? I was like, no. And she was like, yeah. And she was just so like nonchalant about it because she's done like a million, you know? And I was so excited. And about 5 months later, it premiered on Lifetime. And when your movie premieres on Lifetime, there's a difference between Lifetime Movie Network and Lifetime. This was just a big Lifetime movie. It was the movie of the week, and it was so exciting. And I played that character, and suddenly, I don't know if it was a shift in my energy and my perception of myself as an actor. I think it built a lot of confidence. Suddenly, I've done now like 6 more Lifetime movies. This was in 2017 when I did this movie. And suddenly it just opened the door. Like Pandora's box opened up, and I was just getting really great auditions for indie features. And I was just getting, I still audition for Lifetime movies, but sometimes an offered one comes in where I don't have to audition because they've seen one of my previous ones. And I'm so incredibly grateful. Like, I have so much fun making them. And it was really taking that break, aligning myself with what I wanted, and then choosing to even taking that smaller role. It wasn't a small role, but taking that smaller movie and saying, this is going to be a stepping stone, and believing in it enough. And it was, and that was my stepping stone to, now what I have now.
Yeah.
So I'm super, super thankful.
Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great story. And I hope people really listen to that, because ultimately you ended up being the lead in a number of these movies. And it sounds like you're still going strong with those. I'm curious, did it, you mentioned like the director saw you in this first audition. Have you continued to work with that same director? Were there other people that sort of you built a relationship with, like that director, or maybe the casting director, some of these people? I mean, I'm sort of familiar with places like Mar Vista. They're pumping out, 30, 40, 50 these movies a year. So they need sort of a team of good actors and a team of good cinematographers and a team of good. So once you're in with those people, there does seem to be some residual value there.
Yes, 100%. And I tell people all the time, just be kind, show up, do your work, treat everyone with respect, and you will get rehired. And so that casting director, Paul Reddy, has brought me back in for so much. He's brought me back in for not only Lifetime movies, but also indie feature films. Like he's cast me, I think, 5 or 6 times now, and in different various things. And it's honestly so wonderful. And then because of those TV movies, I get into more rooms now. I get to see different casting directors. But yes, the Lifetime family and like the TV movie family, they will continue to use you if you're a nice person. I'm convinced of that. Yeah. And it's good stepping and building blocks as any actor, because I just did my first romantic comedy TV movie, and I shot that last year during pandemic, and I shot that in Georgia. And it was one of those things, because I've always kind of played the scary thriller, kind of scary character, and even if I'm not the killer, I'm still I'm the victim or whatever. And I was really excited to be seen as the romantic lead instead. And I worked very, very hard, but that actual production company brought me back the next month to be in their thriller. So work begets work. And I always tell people, just be very, very kind, show up, do your job. Everyone's there to make you look good. And it's really, we're privileged as actors. Like, I mean, what other job do you get to show up? They feed you, they love you, they do your makeup and hair, and you just have to do your job. And so, yeah, just that's my biggest piece of advice to any actors: just be kind, show up, do your job.
And very sound advice for sure. I always like to wrap up these interviews just by asking the guests if they've seen anything lately that they thought was really great and maybe a little under the radar. Is there anything Netflix, HBO, Hulu that you've seen recently that you thought would be good for actors to check out?
Oh my gosh, I want to divulge. I have a 2.5-year-old, so I don't watch that much.
Gotcha.
But I will tell you, it's not under the radar at all, but it's a brilliant performance. I just watched, oh my God, now I'm blanking on the name. What is the name of The Terminal with Tom Hanks.
Oh, gotcha.
And I know it's an older movie, but my husband had it on and I was like, what is this movie? And he's like, you've never seen The Terminal? And I was like, no. And he was like, you need to watch this. It's so good. Tom Hanks was brilliant in this movie. He's so good. And I was like crying and laughing. And I was just like, this is such an amazing movie. It just, Tom Hanks is just such an amazing actor. And I think anyone should just, he's one of my favorites. But so I recently just watched that movie and I thought it was brilliant. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Okay. Well, I haven't seen it. So that's a good recommendation for me because I haven't seen it and always meant to check it out. So I will check it out.
Oh, it's so good.
What's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing, I will round up and put in the show notes so people can click over and follow you.
Yeah, on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is probably my where I keep most current on because it's like you can share videos and pictures and all the things and you can see. I share a lot of stuff being on set and kind of like the life of an actor. I share lots of stuff there. And that's just my name, Ashlyn_Yennie. So people can find me there. And then also on Twitter, which is my just full name.
Perfect. Well, Ashlyn, I really appreciate you coming on talking with me today. This was a great interview. Good luck with all your projects.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was wonderful chatting with you as well.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
If you enjoyed this interview, do check out my other podcast over at sellingyourscreenplay.com, where I've got hundreds of interviews. They're mostly with producers, directors, and writers, but there are some great interviews with actors as well. But even the episodes with directors, producers, and writers, I think often have a lot of good information in those interviews for actors as well, even if it's just to understand that part of the business better. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review anywhere you find this podcast. You can probably leave a review, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or just retweet it or share it on Facebook. These reviews and shares are very helpful to let the various platforms know what people think of the podcast. And with some good reviews, it can really help get the podcast in front of more people. So if you have a minute and wouldn't mind just leaving a nice review, it would be very much appreciated. That's the show. Thank you for listening.